I'm Kate, this is my channel, and this is my reading wrap-up for July 2017, including my Booktubeathon wrap-up. Over July, I completed Booktubeathon, so I read 7 books required for that challenge, and then with my other books that I read in July, it means I've read a total of 12 things this month, which I'm pretty damn impressed with. My university went back to session on the 31st of July, so I'm going to be working pretty hard for the next couple of months, so I'm not sure how much more reading I'm going to get done. So I feel like for the month before that happened, I did pretty well. So I'm going to start with the books, the non-Booktubeathon books, and then move into the Booktubeathon books. So not the first thing I read, but the first thing I've got to talk about is Down Among the Sticks and Bones by Sean Maguire. I did a full review of this that I've already posted, but the short story is I really liked it. It was great. Everybody should read it. Go look at my video if you want to hear more. The non-fiction book that I read in July was Timekeepers, How the World Became Obsessed with Time by Simon Garfield. I kind of liked it, but it wasn't what I was expecting it to be. I kind of thought it would be more of a philosophical musings on the nature of time and how the way we think about time has changed with the advent of various technologies, but it sort of jumped around a lot through pop culture-y things. Like there was a bit on the Beatles, there was a bit on model trains, which made sense because timekeeping became a big deal with the advent of passenger trains. But there's all sorts of odd little bits and pieces about, running the 2-minute mile, or 4-minute mile, or whatever, however long it takes to run a mile. There was stuff about watches and like how you advertise a watch. There was all sorts of odd things, silent movies, all that sort of stuff. So it was interesting, entertaining, but not what I wanted it to be. So that's that book. My book club book for the month of July was The Animators by Kayla Ray Whitaker. I loved this book. This was, it had the most amazing sense of place. It talked about how to, like the process of making art. It talked about how life can fuck you up. It was about female friendship and female relationships that perhaps weren't healthy but were productive. So I loved it. It was amazing. I'm going to actually see Kayla Ray Whitaker give a talk in her Australian tour at the bookshop where my book club is held on Tuesday, which I'm really looking forward to. So that's The Animators. So I read 2 graphic novels as non-Booktubeathon books. So I read Ms. Marvel Volume 2, Generation Y, which was fun. Don't know what to say about it, but it was fun. And Saga Volume 7, that I enjoyed, but I think I've in a bit of the same boat as a lot of people where I'm just sort of like, Saga's great, but it's still kind of just the same thing that it's always been. There's not much is changing. I probably will continue to read it though, but yeah, it was good. Okay, so my Booktubeathon books. Let's go. So this is my Booktubeathon stack. I completed all of my challenges. The first book that I've got is Read a Book in a Day, which is The Sea Raiders by H.G. Wells. This was a bit of a cheat because it's a tiny little book. I think it's only like 60 pages long. So it's 3 short stories. The first one was The Sea Raiders, which I really liked. It was kind of about giant squid that come up from the depths, and it was just sort of like a factual report of like they came up, they killed some people, they went away, we don't know why they came, we don't know why they went away, we don't know when they're coming back. The second story was called The Land Ironclads, which was, I think it was sort of set during the First World War and like trench warfare, and then there was like this weird technology that was describing like this great big iron monstrosity that sort of charged through, and I'm like, I think it's a tank. It's a bit strange. Didn't really like it. And then the last one was the toy shop, the magic shop. which is about a father and son just going to this weird magic shop, and they're like, is this real magic or is this like just really good trickery? That last one was okay. Overall, I liked it, but by far the best story was the first one. So that's book read in a day. The next book I want to talk about is Gifts by Ursula Le Guin. I don't know where the K goes. Sometimes she's got a K, sometimes she doesn't, and this one she doesn't. This was for A Person Not Like You. Read a book about a person not like you, and I kind of just picked it because it's like a guy, and I'm not a guy, and he lives in a village on like plains, and I don't live in a village, and I don't live on like wastelandy plains. I did not expect to love this book as much as I did. It was a really beautiful character study and a really beautiful look at a community and how the community functions and all the interrelationships and how the communities interact with each other. The voice was amazing. As always, Ursula Le Guin has the most beautiful writing. And, you know, there was just so many things that were not like me. You know, this character has magic. This character voluntarily blinds himself for like 4 years of his adolescence because he thinks that his magical sight is dangerous. And just that he's a leader of his community, and the links to his community is not something that I've ever experienced before. How strongly he feels connected to his community. You know, I'm sure it helps that he's like the leader, the son of the leader of the community, but yeah, I don't feel that sort of community connection, and it was beautiful, and I think I'm going to get the second book because I want to see where they go next. So the next book I want to talk about is for read a hyped book, and I don't know if you can get much more hyped than A Closed and Common Orbit by Becky Chambers, unless you're going to talk about A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet, which is perhaps even more hyped than this one. I really, really liked this book. It did feel more like a novel than A Closed and Common. No, this is A Closed and Common Orbit than A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet. But there weren't as many point of view characters. It sort of alternated mostly between two different time periods, rather than the last book, which I think alternated between like 5 or 6 characters. But again, it's just a beautiful book about people and their relationships and tolerance and understanding people who aren't like you, which is always a nice thing to read about. There was a beautiful conversation where one of the main characters is an AI in a synthetic humanoid body, and AIs aren't considered sentient, and they're not allowed to be housed in humanoid bodies. They're supposed to be in like ships or cars and things like that. So it's a big secret that she's A, sentient, and B, in a humanoid body. And then one of the other characters who she's become friends with finds out, and there's like this really beautiful like coming out conversation, and like the other character is like, I don't understand, but I think this says something about me that I don't like, so I'm going to keep trying, and I don't want to be the person who pushes you away because I don't understand you. So that was a really beautiful conversation. And again, you know, characters are just, oh, you break my heart, you're so beautiful. Which isn't usually how I read books, but that's how I read this one. The next book that I want to talk about is another collection of short stories, The Travelling Tide by Rosalie Love. This was put out by Aqueduct Press, and I got it at the convention I went to in Melbourne in the beginning of June. This was really interesting, really weird, very like literary science fiction, and you can tell that Rosalie Love is an academic because a lot of the writing feels very academic, even though it sort of creates a really strong sense of place and character, but it does so in that capital L literary kind of way. There was one beautiful story that took me a little while to figure out what the hell was going on. Actually, there was a couple of stories where it took me a while to figure out what was going on, but once I did, I was like, oh, I'm so clever, and she's so clever, and I figured her out. But there was one, what was it called? Anyway, it was sort of like about a particular location in space, and it sort of followed that location through different epochs. So it was like way in the paleo, not even the Paleolithic, like the prehistoric. It's mostly water. The main creatures on the planet are creepy fish, and how they survive, and then it moves through, and then it sort of talks about the Australian Indigenous people, and then there's like this bit where the white man comes, and then it sort of drifts off into maybe this happens, and then maybe this happens. Maybe they fight and they go away. Maybe the Indigenous man overcomes the white man and sends him away. Maybe the white man just destroys everybody. Either way, at the end of the day, people are just gone. And it was beautiful, and I wish I could find it to read it back to you, but I should have found it before I started filming, because I now don't know where it is. But it was lovely, and I think I just rambled really weirdly about that, which perhaps not a lot of people are going to understand. But this was a challenging book, but overall I enjoyed it. Oh, and that was for Read a Book Outside. So I read some outside on my lunch break at work, and some just on my balcony on my day off, and then some when I went to the park to read it on the weekend. So the next book that I'm talking about is the one with Read a Book with a Person on the cover, and that's Barrier by Lois McMaster-Bujold, which is part of the Vorkosigan saga. Through internal chronology, I believe this is the second book. So I'm trying to read them in internal chronological order, because they're sort of published all over the place. But I'm a little bit confused as to where things fall in chronology. That's a really hard word to say. But I loved this book. This is still about, most of the books are about Miles Vorkosigan. This one is about his mother, Cordelia, and Miles is actually born in this book. And it's just a beautiful book it's about politics and motherhood, but in such a way that it's not like, I will do anything for my children, but not like, oh, my darling is so precious, but just, this is my kid and don't you dare fuck with him. Some really terrible, terrible things happen in this book, but then the way that characters overcome and push through was inspiring. So I loved it, and I'm looking forward to the next one, which, internal chronological order, is, I think, The Warrior's Apprentice. But I have to double check that before I go out and buy things. So that's Barrier. So my last two books that I'm going to talk about for Booktubeathon are two graphic novels. The first of which is book bought for like a cover buy book, and that's, I've picked From Under Mountains, because I found this image quite striking. I don't usually buy books based on the cover alone, but I'm still feeling my way through graphic novels, and so I've been really heavily choosing ones that have been recommended by people that I trust. This was kind of an attempt to just go, I wonder what I could do if I tried it on my own without any research. Like, would I still like these? So at the time I bought two based on covers, and the first one that I picked was Ravine, and I read that in June and it was crap. So I read this in July with a bit of hesitation. I really liked it though. I was a little bit confused about what was going on. There isn't a lot of text, but the art is beautiful. So I was confused about what was going on, but I enjoyed it enough. I don't know if I will get the second one though. So that's that. And the last one that I picked was Poison Ivy, Cycle of Life and Death. I really like Poison Ivy. I think she's badass and awesome, but this was weird, and I don't think I really liked it very much. And this one was just to get my books up to my 7 books. So that was Booktubeathon. Here, let me see if I can get these in some sort of order so it's easier to hold them up. Okay, so these are the 12 books that I read in July, and I don't know how I'm going to go with reading in August, September, October, or even in November. So my next few wrap-ups might be really, really short. Okay, everyone. Thanks. Bye. And we'll turn it off and see ya.